Today we will see how a civilization of mummies experiences the present day and is hidden within the depths of the earth. So go ahead and get comfortable. Let's begin with the video. This film starts by showing us the unfortunate character of this story, a guy named Sylvester, who is an archaeologist dedicated to plundering mummies. He was searching for treasures in the pharaoh's sarcophagus, but when he opens it, he realizes that there's nothing inside. However, Sylvester is able to read the hieroglyphics at the location, discovering that there is something secret. Just at that moment, an insect appears and sneaks into a hole in the floor. We come to realize that this hole leads us to the hidden city of mummies, which is their world where the mummies live happily, far away from the disgusting humans who wouldn't understand their way of life and would steal their gold. And in this secret world of mummies, we get to know the story of Toot, a young mummy who in the past was the most famous Origa, meaning an acclaimed charioteer in chariot races. But now, he's nothing more than a timid little strawberry. This is because while he was racing, he had a terrible accident that traumatized him forever, causing him to retire from the races. Despite several years passing, this bad memory continued to haunt Toot. Since he was so famous, he still had hundreds of admirers in the world of mummies who even fought over getting his autograph. His crazy fans begged him to marry them, but Toot always politely turned them down, saying that he would wait for true love. Later on, we meet Seckham, Toot's little brother, who was always insisting that Toot return to the races. Seckham also had a really cute pet. One afternoon, the good-natured Toot was helping an old lady cross the street when the cart of a crazy mummy ran over her. So, Toot argues with this arrogant mummy who leaves without even apologizing. "Watch out next time, sweetie," she says. What you didn't know was that this terrible driver was Princess Nefer, the daughter of the all-powerful pharaoh who ruled the world of the mummies. We see that despite living surrounded by luxury and servants, Nefer isn't happy because she would rather live doing what she loves, which is singing. However, her strict father would never allow it. This is because he believed that artists were only part of the human world, and besides, she was already expected to commit to a marriage due to the prevailing sexism. Here we find out that a sacred phoenix would be responsible for choosing her fiancé, and although Nefer refuses to marry a complete stranger, her father explains that she's obligated to respect traditions. So, the resigned Nefer has no choice but to summon the ancient phoenix, which was designated by the goddess of love herself to choose her fiancé. While the bird is flying, young Seckham, who was playing with a boomerang, accidentally hits it, causing the phoenix to land on their rooftop. However, the pharaoh's entourage doesn't notice this accident. They believe that Toot is the chosen one, so they take him to the grand palace for him to meet his future betrothed. They announce to him that he will marry Princess Nefer in just 7 days. Obviously, Toot doesn't want to get married, especially to the arrogant woman he met that morning. On the other hand, Nefer looks down on the humble charioteer because she doesn't want to commit to someone like him. Even though Toot tries to explain to them that marrying without love is madness, the pharaoh interrupts him and warns him that if he doesn't get married, he will cut out his tongue and eyes. So, the fearful Toot has no choice but to accept. The pharaoh gives him a valuable royal ring, saying that if he didn't keep it safe until the wedding day, he would lose his eyes and tongue. Later, Toot talks with the princess, who is just as upset as he is about her father's arbitrary decision. Later on, Toot decides to keep the royal jewel in a very secure place where he kept all his valuable belongings. On the other hand, we go back to Sylvester, who, upon seeing how the insect disappeared through the floor, sends his robot to investigate. As luck would have it, the powerful script leads the robot to Toot's hiding place, where it finds the valuable royal ring and proceeds to steal it, causing an explosion in the process. Realizing that someone from the world of the living did this, Toot deduces that and decides to travel with Seckham to retrieve the royal ring. Once there, Toot warns Seckham that he should stay away from bright lights, as they could reveal his true identity. They then spot the evil Sylvester taking the ring in a truck. When Toot tries to run up to the truck, he is paralyzed with fear, recalling his accident. Fortunately, his little brother manages to help him, and to avoid being discovered, they hide in a box that is transported onto a ship. Princess Nefer appears at the scene, having followed them there. She learns that Toot lost the ring and is relieved because they wouldn't have to marry anymore. However, she still worries about her father's treasure, so she follows Toot to retrieve it. They continue their journey, and after a few days, they arrive in the United Kingdom. As they disembark from the ship, they see Sylvester leaving the area and decide to follow him. Unbeknownst to them, he is heading to a theater. In the city, the mummies do their best to avoid the light as they transform in its presence. When it happens, they take on a different appearance. In that place, they are confused with dancers and they are made to perform in a musical show. When the mummies notice that the actors have the real ring, Nefer cleverly incorporates herself into the show by singing a catchy melody that allows her to retrieve it. This grabs Sylvester's attention. Upon seeing her, he realizes she's a mummy due to a symbol on her clothing. Meanwhile, a producer becomes fascinated with Nefer's performance. When the show ends, white lights illuminate the stage, revealing Nefer's true identity. Since the audience thinks it's all part of the show, they ignore it and end up applauding her great voice. As they leave, it becomes apparent that Toot is starting to like Nefer, who is still very excited about the applause. Later, they decide to return home with the presumed ring, but Sylvester starts chasing them. Fortunately, the producer appears in his vehicle and rescues them. It turns out that he was amazed by Nefer's performance and offers to make her famous. However, before she can respond, Toot becomes overprotective and prevents her from accepting. This greatly upsets Nefer, and they argue because he is thwarting her big dream. While they lament the Phoenix's decision, Sekhum interrupts them by confessing that he was the one who knocked her down with his boomerang. This news lightens the mood for the mummies, as if the Phoenix didn't choose Toot, they wouldn't have to get married. At that moment, they realize the ring is fake. They decide to spend the night at the producer's house and continue the search the next day. That night, Toot becomes somewhat jealous because he had started falling for Nefer, despite the fact that the princess snores like a dog. The next day, the producer pampers his future star by giving her a card to buy new outfits. While the adults were shopping for new clothes, Sekhum becomes fascinated with racing video games. Later on, Nefer was about to record, and even though Toot knows they're running out of time, he decides to support her in fulfilling her dream. The producer creates a video that goes viral due to Nefer's incredible voice, which earns her worldwide fame. That night, Nefer confesses to Toot that she's very happy there and wants to stay, making Toot sad upon hearing the news. Alone, Nefer realizes she's falling in love with Toot, as he has been the only person who supported her. Just then, the evil Sylvester arrives. He had located her through the viral video and kidnaps her, planning to exhibit her in a museum the next day. The director recognizes the origin of the vehicle and Toot rushes to rescue her. Upon arrival, Toot attempts to free the chained Nefer but is caught by the despicable Sylvester, who sedates him to capture him. Meanwhile, the producer reveals that they're going to rescue the sedated mummies. They no longer cared about avoiding the light. Sekhum arrives and manages to free them, and due to the effects of the sedative, Toot and Nefer end up sharing a passionate kiss. Sekhum takes the ring from the museum while Toot entertains the villains with his antics. However, the director distracts the villains, giving them a chance to escape. The mummies flee on a bus that Sekhum is driving, using the skills he learned from the video games. After a long chase, Toot finally manages to catch up, reminiscent of his chariot racing days, and eventually, they end up freeing themselves from the villains through a risky maneuver. Once they're free, the director suggests that they return to Egypt by plane, and Nefer becomes nostalgic because leaving would mean abandoning her dream. You can only tell her to choose her path wisely. Later, we see that she has already decided to return to her family. During the journey, Nefer and Toot appear somewhat awkward, likely due to the earlier kiss. Nefer breaks the tension by thanking Toot for his courage. Toot confesses that he was actually a coward, terrified of speed. However, Nefer slips the ring onto Toot's finger, telling him that without his bravery, she wouldn't have been rescued. Upon their arrival in Egypt, the enamored mummies must bid each other farewell, concealing their feelings. That night, Nefer approaches her father to ask for forgiveness for her escapade. In private, she begins to miss Toot. Meanwhile, Toot had made the decision to let go, as the Phoenix's design no longer bound them. The next day, Sylvester infiltrates the world of the mummies, fueled by a desire for revenge due to his ruined museum exhibition. Using heavy machinery, he threatens Nefer's father. Sekhum informs Toot about this, and the young one advises that rather than wallowing in self-pity, Toot should go after his beloved. Meanwhile, the courageous Nefer confronts Sylvester to save her father. As she catches up to the vehicle, Sylvester starts driving recklessly, endangering Nefer's life. Just in time, Toot arrives and rescues her. However, Toot, who hasn't driven a chariot in years, is plagued by memories of a past accident when he realizes a wheel is about to come off. Fear paralyzes him, but his brother's encouragement reminds him he isn't alone. Sensing that Nefer needs him, Toot musters the courage to chase Sylvester. Despite the wheel issue, Toot presses on and even lunges at Sylvester. Amidst the chaos, Sylvester inadvertently releases the princess. In his rage, Sylvester tries to strangle Toot, seemingly indifferent to their proximity to a precipice. Upon seeing Nefer's peril, he releases her, confessing his love. Sylvester's carriage hurtles into the abyss. A horrified Nefer rushes to the scene, finding Toot hanging from the collar she had given him. Relieved by his safety, she embraces her valiant fiancé. The pharaoh expresses gratitude to Tut for saving her. Overwhelmed with emotion, Nefer shows that Tut has finally conquered his fears. Then, facing the pharaoh, he proposes to the princess, and Nefer joyfully accepts without hesitation. Finally, the wedding day arrives, and after the beautiful ceremony, we see that the strict pharaoh has decided to be a bit more lenient. He declares that singing is no longer prohibited in his kingdom, allowing Nefer to finally find happiness. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more interesting movies.